Okay, so thank you very much for attending the seminar. Today I have the pleasure to introduce you to Simone Cremaschi. Simone is a postdoc at Universidad Bocconi in Italy, in Milano. And he's actually moving, he was telling me the news that he's actually moving to Oxford with a nice position. And Simone, well, I met him many years ago while he was doing his PhD at the UI. And he has a brilliant career and an amazing list of publications in American Political Science Review, American Journal of Political Science. So thank you very much, Simone, for having came, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marta. This was a very nice invitation, and thank you everyone for being here. I see a few known faces, and yeah, very happy to be here and to get your feedback on this work that I will tell you is very preliminary. So I will tell you where we are at, but we are very much looking forward to your comments, and this could really shape where we decide to go, basically. This is a project, I should give the proper credit to who deserves it, that Catherine Lewis and I are running together with two brilliant PhD students, Sienna Norquist at Bocconi and Mattia Cecchi in Zurich. And they are the ones that are taking care of the heavy load of the paper, so all credit basically goes to them. Motivation for the paper. So the idea here is that we will study how the funds from the Marshall Plans that was given by the US after Second World War to Italy was distributed in Italy, and how this had political implications on the political landscape in Italy in the years to come. The motivation basically is that we have huge literature showing how international financial transfers have important economic effects. And I mean, when I talk about international financial transfers, we consider many different types of this. So we could think about remittances, foreign aid, development and reconstruction assistance. We know that all these types of transfers have important economic impacts, but something on which they also have an important impact is the political landscape, how politics of receiving countries is affected. So how did I get to this project? So I'm not an international relations scholar. I have a background in analytical sociology, and then I moved to comparative political economy and comparative politics. This is where most of my publications are now. So I was not so much triggered by the international relations aspect of it, but I was drawn to this by a history that I got in a fieldwork for another paper. A lot of my work focuses on local political dynamics, dynamics that go on in small communities, and how these influence wider national dynamics. So I've done a lot of work on local memories of the resistance against Nazi fascists. Fran knows something about it. And a lot of work on how the local provision of public services shapes support for far-right parties. This is something that I have developed across a few papers. One of these is now published in the American Political Science Review. I should do a bit of advertisement about this paper because it's my favorite paper. I really love it, but no one is citing it. So I will give you a short summary of it. Fantastic paper. We study what we define as a collective economic shock, that is a disease that kills all the olive trees in the southern part of Puglia, in the southern of Italy. This is kind of a small economic crisis. We show that this triggers a lot of sentiments of that the local identity has been destroyed, and this gets exploited by far-right parties, basically. But what we show, very important for this paper as well, is that these effects are particularly concentrated in places that already had a history of feeling abandoned by the central state, right? So in one of these places that we call Querceto, to maintain anonymity, in the center of Salento, southern part of Puglia, this is a place that was hit by this epidemic, and the effect on support for the far right was really, really high. So we went there to interview all the local politicians, all the representatives of the community, to try to find out what had happened. And basically their origin story about all of this was that their village had been abandoned by the Italian state since the very beginning. This traced back to World War II, where when a senator from this village had been initially elected to the Senate. And according to what everyone says in this village, what this politician was doing for his hometown was mainly to convey a lot of resources to the town. So basically he had started to a program to plant a lot of trees on this hill where this picture was taken, which was with no trees before. He started this public program to plant a lot of trees. He built a huge hospital where to put people to take fresh air, and a lot of other public activities. Then at some point, something happened that basically was that this senator that was part of the Christian Democracy by then, that was the main governing party at the moment, had a fight with Alcide De Gasperi, that was the head of the Christian Democrats, and he was kicked out of the party. What was the effect for this town was that suddenly they didn't have any more a connection to the national state, and all the resources were actually conveyed to the neighboring village, where now the hospital is, the police station is, and everyone in this Querceto town is complaining about this. So this story was really interesting for this paper because it was like evidence that there was a longer story of feeling abandoned by the national state, but also left me with the idea that actually maybe something interesting was going on at the time, and we could try to study this more systematically. Okay, so basically the idea that I got from this fieldwork was, well, could we find a way to study whether having a politician that was born in your hometown and that has strong linkages to this place has an effect on basically the future development of this town and maybe on the future political dynamics, right? So for me, this was like, okay, maybe I can really study the origins of this public service deprivation that we are studying in other papers and see if there is a long-term perspective on this. Then I met Sienna, who is the first author on this paper, who is conducting a PhD on basically the Marshall Plan in Europe. And we basically came up with the idea that, well, actually this senator was operating exactly in the years when Marshall Plan funds were disbursed. This was a key event in the Italian history that really shaped the economic development of the country. And we thought, okay, this could be really a key moment to study if we want to study these dynamics. So we set up this study. The results, as I will show you, were the opposite of what we were expecting. So we are now in the process of building a theory on it and deciding the next empirical steps. But so far, these are the main theoretical insights that we have gathered. So let's think about what is reconstruction aid and how this could have an impact on domestic policies. So there are basically two perspectives. on the one hand, there is the perspective of the foreign donor. So I mean, and usually foreign donors give aid for reconstruction for two key reasons. One of them is to revitalize the economy of the recipient country, and this has, of course, some positive advantages for the donor, because this means that they will have a good economic partner they could trade with. This will help also stabilize their economy. But the second condition usually is also to influence the political setting of the recipient country. So this aid is usually given with a precise objectives. In most of the cases in recent history, especially if we think about the United States, on which we are focusing now, but you may also think to what is going on in these days with the Trump's plan about Gaza. The idea is to really, shape the politics of the recipient country, oftentimes with the objective to make the country transition to liberal democracy. This is the perspective of the donor. There is then the perspective of the domestic incumbent, which is quite different. So, and I forgot to say, if you have questions, please interrupt me. I come from a econ socialized department where asking questions is strongly encouraged, and I actually love it. So if something is not clear, please raise your hand. So the domestic incumbent perspective is actually quite different. So the key element of reconstruction aid is that this is money that does not come from taxation. So in a certain sense, the recipient government is getting this money outside of the social contract on which usually receiving money for a government is based. So usually the idea is, okay, I receive this money through taxation and I have some accountability constraints on how I should spend this money. The case of reconstruction aid is a bit different because it doesn't come with these constraints. So it's usually something that is used in a more discretionary way. And in particular, we know that public resources are often used for electoral objectives. So, and this is a case where this is particularly likely, right? Because of the absence of these constraints. So the idea could be that with this money, incumbent parties could fund swing districts where they hope they could gain more at the next election, or at the opposite, they could use it to reward more loyal districts and basically make these links that they already have even stronger. So this is basically the perspective of the dominant actors involved, but there is a key element that is missing there. And this is very specific to clientelistic political environments, of which Italy is a basically classic textbook example for, especially for the post-war period. So the idea is that public resources are not necessarily distributed in a fair way across districts or based on needs, but there is typically a broker in the middle that works to bring more resources to places that are into their area of interest. So we have a lot of evidence about politicians that deviate public resources to the places that they like the most and to solidify their political career. But actually, there is also a lot of evidence that the most effective brokers are not necessarily elected politicians, but a lot of the clientelistic brokerage is happening outside of the parliamentary arena, let's say. So, and this is like evidence from India, from many different contexts. A reference that is particularly interesting on this is an old book by, can't remember the name now, like an old book by by Sidney Tarrow on post-war Italy, where he studies basically mayors, the role of mayors in connecting the center to the periphery. And something that he shows qualitatively is that mayors from the Communist Party, that basically was the party that was not in government at the moment, it was the main opposition party, were the most effective in negotiating access to funds from the Marshall Plan for their towns. Right? So the idea is that even if you're not elected, you may have like strong incentives to act in favor of your hometown or place where you plan to cultivate your political career and try to convey resources to these places. And again, evidence from Italy, the idea is that politicians do not always convey resources to their electoral district, but they may do so also they may also convey resources to other places, for instance, the town where they were born or where they reside, for personalistic reasons. Why? Because, for instance, in the case of the senator of Querceto, the idea is that you will then enjoy a high status in your town. You will have a lot of possibilities to have a local political career. So, I mean, this is something that you will carry on throughout your whole life, right? Even when you will leave office in parliament. So, what are the implications for reconstruction aid? We thought about it and came out with the following idea. So, we think that basically politicians face asymmetric incentives, right? So on the one hand, you will have elected politicians that, of course, they will have incentives to convey resources to their hometown, but at the same time, they will have strong incentives to basically to make a career in the national party, no? So they will need to maintain a strong link with the party leadership, and will then perhaps have less incentives to do clientelistic brokerage for their local constituency compared to losing candidates. Losing candidates actually are the ones that have the strongest incentives to cultivate these clientelistic ties, because at the next election, they will need to actually pass the cutoff, right? So they are probably, basically we expect that the ones that got near to the cutoff to entering into parliament will be the ones that will put the strongest effort into conveying resources to their local constituency, hoping that these resources will help them at the next election. Yes.
So just a quick question. So can you please explain how do losing candidates have access to public funds to distribute them?
Yeah. So yeah, this is something that we plan to explore qualitatively because there is not so much evidence on it, but the book by Sidney Tarrow that I was mentioning before is an example. So the idea is that you are part of the party network. So mayors, for instance, what they were doing were going to
But mayors were elected. I'm talking about people who weren't elected, who barely made it, but were not elected. How did they have access to public funds to distribute to their clients?
Yeah, I mean, I guess they could, put pressure, negotiate, try to enter committees, also committees within the party. I guess there would be a few channels, which we don't know yet, but the idea is that they are politicians, they interact in this network that they have of politicians, and they can put an effort to, through their personal connections, to have resources conveyed to their hometown. But the specific channels, of course, is something that we need to explore more. Yes.
On that. So have you checked if there are some other sources of money? I mean, if you have some, well, I don't know, some other groups that they may have all the source of money that they are using to do this broken clientelism, like mafia money and something like that.
So no, I mean, here we are focusing just on Marshall Plan funds. So this is the key idea. But yeah, we could think to a wide range of resources that they may want to mobilize. Yeah. Other. No.
Linked to that, I think that an idea would be to try to figure out if those who are not in government,
Yeah.
You can compare across them. Because perhaps you find some group of local politicians who have some veto power to arrive to agreements in the implementation of the resources.
Yep.
So there, perhaps you have some leverage to compare.
Yep.
If in the kind of coalition governments or not, or majoritarian governments at the local level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would be one avenue.
Later, I will tell you what we are thinking about to do now quantitatively. You will tell me if you think that would be convincing, and also what we are planning to do in terms of more qualitative work. But this is crucial. So, okay, so this is the main theoretical intuition. The second intuition that comes with this is that, of course, if we try to study this just with correlational evidence, it's very hard to find out a difference between these different incentives, because, of course, politicians that have, for instance, the strongest influence in decisions are also the ones that get elected in specific towns that have specific characteristics. So this is very hard to study. So, and this is why what we do here is to implement a regression discontinuity study that I will explain in a second. Where do we expect this to work? Not just in Italy, but in places where basically reconstruction aid is mediated by local elites, and elections are sufficiently competitive. So this means that basically losing candidates have an incentive to continue trying to be elected at next elections, and like the projects that are funded through reconstruction aid are very visible. So, for instance, the projects that we are focusing on in this project are basically big infrastructure stuff that voters can easily recognize. And this is something that could apply to many different contexts. Think, for instance, to Syria, Sudan, what could be the case also in Ukraine. So, I mean, are conditions that can be met in other places. So now, the Marshall Plan in Italy. Marshall Plan, I mean, it was one of the biggest reconstruction programs in history, 13 billions erogated by the United States to 16 countries, mostly between 1948 and 1952. Italy was the third recipient of these funds, with an amount of about 1.55 billions. The US erogated these funds with two objectives. One that was the economic objective of course, revitalize the European economy. This is something that was crucial also to basically pave the way to what would become the European Union, and with clear benefits for the US, of course, in terms of trade agreements. And on the other hand, a clear geopolitical objective. At the time, Cold War was just about to start, so the idea was, okay, we want to keep communists out of power, right? So this was the objective for the US. What we want to show also is that actually, given these clientelistic dynamics, what comes out at the end could be slightly different. So these funds could actually be used for different objectives. What is interesting about the Marshall Plan funds is that this was a context in which basically the decisions on all the projects were taken by two international committees, one based in the US, one based in Europe, plus an interministerial committee in Italy. And in this case, what is crucial is that the Italian officials had a lot of space to decide upon the project because of many disagreements that were happening between the committee in the US and the committee in Europe. So in the end, most of the projects were finally decided upon by the interministerial cabinet in Italy. The election that was key was, of course, the election that was held at the beginning of the period, so 1948, which was won by the Christian Democrats by large majority, which completely excluded the communists from the decision making. But as Sidney has shown us, of course, like the communists had other channels to influence policy making. So I mean, the effect of connections from politicians from one party or the other is not clear from the beginning. So, okay, to study this, so we made a huge data collection effort. Why? Because many of the data that we want to use were not digitized yet. So the Italian Ministry of Interior has, of course, an extremely nice database of electoral returns, which we use here. But then what we were interested in was to trace the personal linkages of politicians with some specific areas, right? So, and how do we do this? We went to the archive from the parliament in Rome and found a book that indicated all the breakdown of the candidates for this election. We digitized this and connected it to the electoral return database. We then sourced the basically all the seats that were assigned to each district, reconstruct very carefully how the procedure to assign seats worked, and also connect this data to a database that was also just on paper, listing all the projects that were funded by the Marshall Plan and linking them to a specific town in Italy. And this is about 7,000 projects. Then a key step here was also crucial for how we then ran the regression discontinuity was to actually check that these data were accurate. And what we did then was to basically create a computational model in R that was reproducing how seats were assigned to all the candidates. It was a crazy exercise. Like I recommend you to do it if you're interested in electoral procedures, because you really learn a lot on how these things work. But so basically we started this simulation, realized that actually our electoral model was electing candidates that were not the ones that were really elected. So this pushed us to check very carefully the law. We also found some imprecisions that were coded in the database from the Ministry of the Interior, because there were some changes right after election of votes that were miscounted, and then politicians that were taken away their seats and assigned again to another seat. So this is the raw data that we use, very long process. How do we use it? We basically implement this cross-parliamentary RDD. This is a bit different from other regression discontinuity that you may have seen on the effect of, for instance, the election of a mayor with certain characteristics on some outcome in a municipality, or or some politicians in some subnational unit. It has an effect on that subnational unit. This is different because basically we want to test. So the regression discontinuity is happening between municipal units, right? So we are not interested in seeing like mayor against mayor competing in a town, and we are comparing 8,000 towns and in each of them there is a randomization. So here is municipalities that have a number of candidates running, because like we consider candidates that were born in a town as running for the municipality in a way. And then we want to see the effects at the margin of having a candidate from your town that passes the threshold to being elected, right? So this requires some specific assumptions that I'm going to discuss in a minute. Any question on this?
So what is the outcome variable?
So the outcome variable will be the amount of Marshall Plan funds per capita in a given town. So how the process works? So this is, again, not so straightforward because, the electoral system has a series of steps that I'm not going to discuss here. The large part of it is based on a PR system. Yes.
Let me just ask you a question. So before you were talking about this commission or this committee based in the US and in Europe that would decide on which projects would be funded, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now here you are, in a way, the outcome variable that you have is to measure the money spent per capita based on the electoral results.
Yes.
So how does the committee come in here?
Yeah. So, I mean, as I was saying, basically, there were three actors in the decision on the projects, right? So there was a committee in the US, a committee in Europe, and a committee in Italy. And according to historians, in the end, like the actor that prevailed was the committee in Europe, right? Because the other two committees were basically spent a lot of time discussing between them. So, I mean, we don't expect that basically we expect that you don't need to be part of the committee to have an influence of which project gets assigned, right?
So if a committee decides that this is going to be built here or there, or going to assign money for this or that, would someone running for a mayor really
not mayor here. So we are talking about the parliamentary election of 1948.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would someone running for a legislative candidate have an influence and could overrule the committee?
No, but through clientelistic ties, the idea is that the committee is not deciding upon this project in isolation, right? Mm-hmm. But all the members of the committees are somehow linked to other politicians that will have some room to make the case for their town, right? And to somehow negotiate that some funds are allocated to their town or to some other town. This is the assumption behind this.
It's a strong assumption.
Yeah. But I mean, we know from a lot of contexts that these clientelistic ties.
No, I agree
right?
with clientelistic. No, for sure.
I don't think it's like unrealistic. It's a strong assumption, but overall, I guess, quite realistic, at least for Italy in this historical moment. Yes, please.
I just want to make sure I understand the nature of the RGD.
Yeah.
So the thing about the districts with multiple candidates, some of whom are from that town, some of whom are not from that town, and that's the condition, basically closely elected candidates who were born in that town versus not born from it. Was that kind of?
So in the final model, basically we will have each town running, like we will have as many units as towns we have in Italy, as towns with candidates born there. So let's say we have 8,000 municipalities. 3,000 municipalities have a candidate that is born there. Any candidate. Some towns will have 15 candidates, like Milano and Roma will have many candidates. Segrate. Sorry?
So it's combining multiple districts across the town?
Each town is part of a larger district. okay, and the election of parliamentarians takes place at the district level,
Okay.
right? But the key idea is that each town is running with one candidate, and the candidate that we choose for the town is basically the candidate that wins or loses, but that has the strongest margin, the strongest probability to get elected, right? So you will have some towns like Milano, Roma, that will have a huge probability of get elected, and so they won't be in our regression discontinuity because they will be very far from the cutoff. You will have some towns, perhaps very small towns, that will have candidates with a very low probability of get elected, and they won't be in our regression discontinuity as well. What we will have on the discontinuity will be towns that basically have their top running candidate that gets either just up the threshold to get elected or just below the threshold to
And
get
that's
elected.
always one who's from that town.
Yeah. So in the model, you will have many towns, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, you mentioned that there's this argument about like candidates who were born in that town.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like selecting on.
Yeah, exactly. So the linkage between towns. So I mean, we measure the outcome at the municipality level, that is Marshall Plan funds.
Right.
The way in which we link the municipality with the specific candidate is whether the candidate is based on whether the candidate was born in the town or not, right? What's the big assumption here? Again, to talk about assumptions, is that, of course, the assumption is that the politicians care about their hometown, right? This is an assumption in the sense that also in that.
That's not a strong assumption.
Well,
No, there is a
No?
lot of, you can cite
Okay.
20 things that's not a strong assumption.
okay, yeah.
I wouldn't.
Okay.
Unless you think that one who has born in a city, then live there for 5 years, and then move to another city and develop a linkage with another
Exactly.
city.
So this is
So in
one
that
aspect.
question, it would be
There is
difficult.
also another aspect that is by the time, so like 80% of people were born at home, 20% were born in hospitals, and hospitals, of course, were not located in any town, right?
But for example, what about cities that could be electoral strongholds for parties, but for some reason the party doesn't have someone from that specific city?
Yeah.
Just randomly.
Yeah.
So you can have a city, the party's super strong there.
Yeah.
So wouldn't the party be advocating for that particular city?
Could be, but we won't be testing this here, right? So what we are interested in here is just whether, the fact of coming from a town creates a linkage to that. Then funds will be allocated with a multiplicity of mechanisms, and we are not arguing that this is the only mechanism, right?
Yeah.
It's just to find out, about this politician level dynamics. Fran.
Yeah, so you're getting into it. So basically, the unit is a town.
Yeah.
The running variable is the likelihood that you have someone from that town parliament. That means the project being built. How many projects were built in towns without name?
Good question, which I don't have the information on, but I will. Other questions?
So just to make sure I have understood everything so far.
Yeah.
So taking into account your regression design and your hypothesis, your expectation would be that those candidates right below the cutoff point will increase funding.
Exactly.
Just the one below the cutoff point, which is the losing candidate.
Compared to the ones just above, right?
Just
because
above.
then if you compare them to any candidate, that's a different
So
story.
this is your expectation, right? That you.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. First of all, is that you have this issue in which how many funds a municipality receive in part is endogenous or is due to the destruction that they suffered in World War II.
Yeah.
Which I guess is the point of the Marshall Plan.
Yeah.
And this is not randomly assigned, right? Like
Of
specific places are more due to the war, due to the being a big city, a small
Exactly.
city.
Yeah.
So we expect the cities to be the most destroyed cities being different from each other.
Yes.
That may be a problem. And second, from your theoretical framework, I think I struggle a bit of your, well, not a bit, but like, you talk about this in the context of clientelism.
Yeah.
But in post-war Italy, we know that politics were incredibly ideologically driven, in the sense that if we correlate rural population and Christian Democrat vote, it's almost a one-to-one there. And the same for the Communist Party and the big cities in the north. So usually these kind of arguments rely on the idea that you have this population and if you give funds to them, they will switch to your party.
Yeah.
But in a lot of cases in post-war Italy, I just cannot think that a party that, whether they have a bit more money or not, a rural area is going to vote for the Italian Communist Party.
Yep.
So like in this context, I think I find a little bit difficult to like put this up purely clientelistic stuff.
Yep.
Because there is a lot of ideologically driven competition that locks, let's say, voters into different parties, regardless of how much money they give them.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Two very important questions. So on bombings and characteristics of municipalities. Yeah, of course. Like this is a crucial aspect, especially because Marshall plans were directed at places that were bombed, basically. So this was the first criteria. So how do we go about this? We control for it in our discontinuity, but then in the regression discontinuity setting, basically the key assumption is to test whether this covariate that is having some bombings is continuous at the cutoff, right? So in the next slides, what I will show you is that these characteristic, this municipality characteristic, among and others together with it, are basically exactly the same if we consider just towns around the cutoff and on one side and the other, right? Then on the ideological disposition of towns and being this and the fact that this may be very hard, like to move voters, I perfectly agree. So two aspects to keep into consideration. One is again, so one important implication for our design is that we would not want that municipalities that marginally lose are systematically different in terms of ideology from municipalities that marginally win, right? So what I will show together with the bombings variable is that actually if we consider just municipalities that are close to the threshold, these are very similar. So we don't have these big differences. And the other aspect that is more on the mechanisms is, of course, we may think that would be hard to move people from, for instance, the Christian Democrats to the Communist Party. But if we think about the politician incentives, maybe there could also be an incentive to say like, well, okay, I don't want to move people from the Christian Democrats to my party if I'm a communist, but I may want that people give more personal votes to me, right? Because this is an open list system. So this is also important. Yeah.
So, it's an open list system. You may want to relate this because this is the whole thesis of post-war Japan, because it's exactly why they have corruption, because you have people from the same party competing for people to vote for them personally, and they compete against each other, and that's why they have corruption and this kind of this, because they want people to vote for them specifically. So you may want to look at the post-war Japan, because I hear that are similar.
Thank you. Thanks. Yes.
Just sorry, very not expert in political sciences. Still have some ethnographic data about one mechanism. Received a question, particularly the importance of people who are not elected, politicians who are not elected, in directing funding. In my town, which was very affected in Italy because it was in the Gothic line, which was
which town?
In the department of Ravenna, so communist region. there were a lot of funding of this coming from Plan Marshall, but at least from the memory of, since you are interested in memory of municipality, socialists have a really a say in directing this funding. And so this going back to the question George asked you about the influence of people who are not elected, of politicians who are not elected in directing influences. Because Plan Marshall, at least normally, you know, we say that Plan Marshall has a role in directing electorate towards liberal democracy, toward Christian Democrats. And so maybe in these municipalities where it was very important to have a lot of funding, because especially in Emilia-Romagna, Tuscany, which are very red countries, but still there were really urgently needed reconstruction. So maybe a situation was passing through, for example, other parties different from the Communist Party, in spite of the fact that they had won the municipalities in many, I think Ravenna, all of them, basically, Romagna, basically, all the municipalities. Some few exceptions.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
I don't know, I'm just...
Yeah. I took notes. Then going to the other questions. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like we have now moved to the economics
I like
side
it.
of the presentation.
I asked for it.
So just going back to the IDB, so if I understand this correctly, there's one potential kind of threat to balance, and I'm just curious, I don't know the case enough to see whether that's the case, but do you have districts, municipalities, where there are only candidates from that town? If so, I think that's a potential problem, and you would have to remove them, because if you have districts that only have candidates that were born in that town, then they are always to the right of the threshold, because one of the candidates will win.
I mean, not necessarily, right?
Because if every candidate who is running in that district is from that town,
yes,
someone will win. Doesn't matter who wins.
I mean,
it's always someone who is from that town. So you can be close to the threshold, but you can only be to the right of the threshold. If I understand your setup correctly.
Yeah, just to make sure that I understand your point. So, I mean, it may be the case that like a municipality has lots of candidates, but they are all not very influential, and the 3 seats that are assigned in that districts are actually assigned to 3 candidates from other 3 municipalities, right? So basically the district includes more municipalities, right? It's like a region, let's say, in the Senate, like we have these regional districts. So you have many municipalities taking part in the assignment, and I mean, yeah, candidates can come from many different municipalities, but it's not given that if you have several candidates from your municipality, you will get any into the seat.
Okay. Yeah.
Because the competition does not take place inside the municipality,
Right.
but at the district level, that is a larger union.
Right. Okay.
Right?
How big are the districts?
At the Senate, these are regions, so they are like 30 something, I would say. And I mean districts in total. So we have 8,000 municipalities, and then in the chamber these are 131 districts. So I cannot give you the number of municipalities by district, but a few. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's...
There were 2 fingers there. So.
This question,
yeah.
I mean, the municipalities that only have a candidate on this municipality, so the 3,000 municipalities. All the
Sorry, I didn't get the. I didn't hear.
All the municipalities that don't have a politician candidate are not in the.
They are not in the model. Yes.
But I mean, the key thing is still the added randomness is between someone who is from that municipality who won the election versus who just lost the election against someone who's not from that municipality, right?
Listen, it's like in districts are divided, right? You have someone from a municipality running a different district.
We have people born in Bologna that run in the district of Palermo, for instance.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I just have a question. So if you, of course, you have the open PR, you have the open PR system, right? So which allows people. But I mean, how are you framing this in terms of? I mean, these districts are quite large districts, so their magnitude is at least medium, right? So in these districts, it's mostly the party brand that is carrying the weight for people to vote for that particular party. And of course, candidates, I mean, as Fernando was pointing out, there is a Japanese example where you have the open PR, where candidates will engage in all sorts of clientelistic or even get into corruption to get elected. But I mean, with the super strong parties, the communists and the Christian Democrats, I mean, I just don't see how individual level efforts of credit claiming would make a difference in the election. And also, I mean, in open PR systems, candidates usually are ranked already. So parties, even though people would vote for them, parties still rank them. As in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So people can, with their open system, with their open vote, they can change the ranking that the party offers. But the party's placement of the candidates in the list will, there are several papers showing this, will send a super strong cue. And some people, for example, if you are a communist who cares about the programmatic position of the party, you would be voting for the party a little bit irrespective of the candidate.
Yes. Many questions in one question.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't like this format. I think that we should leave our guest the place to say and to show all his findings, and then after that we will make all the comments, because we are blocking him with all our ideas and reflections. So please be kind and let Simone to go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. So very quickly, so on the open list, so yeah, of course, yeah, there is probably a ranking. Then, I mean, preferences matter, right? And we actually, like, by modeling this election, we actually see how this margin matters a lot to get elected. Yeah, I will move on and then we go back. Also because I have direct tests for that I think will on this. So this is the setting. This is the model. I mean, it's in RDD, we have already described most of it. So the outcome is the amount of Marshall Plan funds per capita. Then the running variable is this basically probability of getting elected. The unit of analysis is the municipality, which gets assigned a margin of victory based on the top running candidate born in that municipality. We control for some characteristics, including the bombings, whether the municipality was bombed during the war, the size of the town by controlling for the number of eligible voters, the number of running candidates that some of you was asking about, and then we also include fixed effects for region. So basically, like the estimation takes place within regional units. Okay. Then for estimation, I mean, we just follow the standard practices. So this is really what everyone else does. So local polynomial of order 1, optimal bandwidth following the Calonico et al. Methods, and the triangular kernel weighting. Nothing new here. Let's get to the results. So this is the RDD plot, right? So here we see what we were suggesting with our expectations. So basically, at the margin, and considering only candidates that are close to the cutoff within this optimal bandwidth, we see that the municipalities that get more funds are the ones that had a candidate that was marginally losing the election. This is compared to a candidate that is marginally winning. Okay, this is a crucial aspect. So we can formally test this both and find an effect both on the amount of funds per capita received by the municipality and on the basically on the probability that the municipality gets access to any funds. So we can consider this as a continuous variable or as just a 0-1, getting some funds or not getting anything. Now, what are the assumptions to convince you and myself as well that this is a causal effect? We thought about the following 3 assumptions, and you tell me if you have other ones. But so the first key assumption is that there shouldn't be any municipality characteristic that does affect the probability that a candidate near the cutoff passes the cutoff, right? So we may think, for instance, to, I don't know, being bombed or having a particular ideological disposition in town, these kind of things. So near the cutoff, we shouldn't see that any characteristic kind of matters to make you pass the cutoff. The second assumption is that parties do not field candidates near the cutoff based on their party strength in the candidate's own town. So there shouldn't be this kind of strategic reasoning by parties that can kind of plan ahead and think like, okay, so if I field in this range of candidates that are likely to be above or below, just above or just below the cutoff, the effect of having a strong electoral base in the hometown of this candidate shouldn't matter in the decision of the party to field this candidate. And the third assumption is that, again, near the cutoff, the fact that the candidate runs in a specific district or in another, and specifically in the effect of running in the district where the candidate was born, should not matter to pass the cutoff. This is what we test with a range of variables. So what you see here is the zeta statistic. So basically, this is 2 standard deviations, and the dots should be within this bandwidth and as close to 0 as possible, but crucially within this bandwidth. So regarding the first assumption, what we do that was about municipal characteristics, what we do is to use the covariates that we also use in the model, and I mean the model we also do it without that controls, but basically we use the same covariates here. So the idea is that the fact that the municipality was bombed should not matter. The number of eligible voters and the number of candidates shouldn't have an impact on the probability to pass the cutoff. Then, talking about the party strategic decision to field a candidate based on their strength in their hometown, we test, for instance, if there are differences in basically the proportion of votes that each party has in these hometowns. So we wouldn't want to see that these basically like towns that are passing the cutoff are disproportionately pro-Christian Democrats or pro-Communist Party. Neither that they have, for instance, more turnout, so they should be similar on these characteristics. And finally, on the fact of running in your own district or not, what we can check is whether running in the district where your hometown is placed or not has an impact on your chances to pass the cutoff, right? And reassuringly, we don't find differences that are like out of the range. If you have like suggestions on other things that we should check, I'm happy to take suggestions. But then let me move on to the next steps. This is basically the last slide, but it's also where I would really like to get your comments. What are we planning to do next? So what I show you, I think gives convincing evidence that marginally losing the election compared to marginally winning had an effect on the amount of funds that were assigned to a municipality. Now, we want to do several different things. One is to basically test whether this had an impact, like whether the fact of brokering resources to their own towns had an impact on the politician career, right? So, because this would be, would basically be very convincing in, I think, in showing that basically there are incentives for politicians to try to convey these resources. So what are we thinking to do is to basically pass to a difference in difference model where we consider only municipalities that had losing candidates, right? And we consider all the candidates. So the unit of analysis is not anymore the municipality, but it's all the losing candidates. We have results for the 1948 election. We have results for the 1953 and 1958 election. And the idea would be to see whether receiving more funds in your municipality has an effect on your career, like but this should be conditional on your margin to victory, right? So we should, we would like to find a positive effect of receiving some funds in your hometown, but only if you were close to the threshold. If you have other ideas, I'm extremely happy. Then, the second thing that we want to do is to basically to dig deeper into the mechanics. So to answer the question about, okay, but how did this work, right? So how did local politicians manage to broker resources to their hometown? Did this add an impact on their political career that we cannot see based on electoral data? Because, for instance, it could be that they lose the election and they decide to go to local politics, right? So maybe they become mayors, they enter regional governments. I mean, there are different possibilities that we would not observe just based on the data that we have. So the idea is to select two cases. Can I click on? To select two cases and to do so based on our RDD model, right? So these are what I showed you before were basically these bins that condensate the municipalities. Here, these are all the municipalities that are within our threshold. And we would like to dig more into two key cases. One would be a case where a municipality had a candidate that just lost the election and had a lot of funds and received a lot of funds. To basically, this would be like a positive case. This case, they both are positive cases. So, but yeah, we would like to explore the side of the losers and to check whether they were actually making efforts to negotiate resources, whether they were successful, whether this had an impact on their career. The second case that we would like to explore is a positive case, but on the side of the winner. So we would like to check a case where a candidate just entered the parliament, but the town did not receive any funds. Importantly, we want to give the same chance to these municipalities to receive some funds. So the idea is that we will only consider towns that were bombed. Okay, so that somehow, like, the fact that a town is bombed and don't receive any fund is kind of a strong case to explore why this did not happen, because in principle it should. Of course, like there would be several ways to go about how to choose the best cases, and each case selection strategy could give us insights on different aspects of our mechanism. So also in this case, if you have opinions on this, they are very welcome. And finally, what we would like to do is to study how these local brokerage dynamics had an impact on the big confrontation that was taking place at the moment. That was a confrontation between the Christian Democrats and the Communist Party. So we know that these funds were erogated by the United States with the precise objective to strengthen the Christian Democrats. But it could be that actually, so for instance, from the evidence from Sidney Tarrow, it could be that actually, if we zoom in at the micro level, then candidates from the opposition, losing candidates from the Communist Party, may have had stronger incentives to actually try to obtain these funds, and this may have had effects that are actually out of the objectives of the original plan. So this is what I have at the moment. Thanks a lot for engaging. I'm looking forward to your further questions and comments. And yeah, thank you.